I have a question for you.
Yes.
I want you to imagine that you are a marketer specifically for this product right here. Cough syrup, right? What's the weakness or imperfection as we think about this product?
About cough syrup in general or about that image?
Yeah. Oh, no, just cough syrup in general. If you had to market cough syrup, what's the weakness or the...
Well, I think the obstacles to selling it might be articles that have said that cough syrups are ineffective. Taste.
Yeah, like specifically what about the taste?
Just thoughts of your childhood and how it just is this very weird cherry flavor.
Right. So nobody's ever drank something in their life and they said, ooh, this tastes so good. It tastes like cough syrup, right? Those words have never been echoed. So as a marketer, if you were trying to market cough syrup, what would you do to counteract that?
Show lots of different types of people tasting it and enjoying it.
Enjoying it, right? Or you,
yeah.
To your point, you said cherry flavor before. You might come out with new flavors, right, to enhance or mask that bag taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's one cough syrup company that decided actually to do the opposite, and it's a company called Buckleys. Has anyone heard of Buckleys before? It's from Canada, so I'm seeing no takers. And believe me, I would tell by your face if you've ever heard of or had the displeasure to try Buckleys. If you read some of the reviews on Amazon for Buckleys, it will stop you in your tracks. It tastes awful, right? But instead of trying to make excuses or to make the flavor better, the makers of Buckley actually embraced how horrible it tasted. And get this, in their advertising, they actually compared Buckley's in a blind taste test to sweaty gym socks, to trash bag leakage, and I'm not sure what this is, but it's awful, public restroom puddle. And you've got to see his reaction when he tries Buckley's.
I can't tell. Must be made
by the same people, he says. I love that. So Buckley's is saying what? It tastes awful, but why does it taste awful? Because it works, right? People swear by it and they swear at it. They took the biggest imperfection or weakness, and instead of trying to cover it up, they exposed it and actually told you it probably tastes worse than you actually think it is. So that's neat. But did it work, right? So here's some results of the campaign. So before they launched this campaign and this new direction, they were just 2% of the market in Canada. Within 18 months of launching it, they became 11% of the market in Canada. Now, my mom was French Canadian, so if you're not aware of this, this is what they call in Canada a hockey stick. 550%. But here's the thing. Do me a favor, Joe, unmute yourself for a second. Joe, you didn't come on this program and spend your lunch, right, not knowing that being different was important, did you?
Correct.
You knew that coming in. We're marketers. Everything we do is about trying to create separation. But even though that we know this, and there's a great book written called Different by a woman named Youngmi Moon. She's a professor at this small little school in Boston called Harvard Business School. She says, even though we know it's important, the number who are truly able to achieve competitive separation, she says, is depressingly small. And so I'm going to stick with you, Joe. If you had to guess, what do you think studies actually tell us about the percentage of people who have the ability to both think and act differently? Do you think that's a high percentage or a low percentage, Joe?
The ability to?
The ability to think and act differently.
I think the ability is a high percentage. The execution or the acting on that ability is a low percentage.
Is you're going to say is low. So
Yeah.
You're right, because the studies show, combining those two things, that it's roughly about 3% of people have the ability to think and act differently. Where do you think the other 97% are, Joe?
I think they're probably in that comfortable, complacent category.
Yeah, where are they stuck, do you think?
Fear, I think, for some. I think, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons when I think of my own self, what keeps me from truly differentiating. Sometimes it's energy, you know?
Right. Well, it's also, sometimes we can't see the label when we're kind of stuck inside the jar, right?
Mhm.
A lot of people get stuck in the box of their industry that they work in. And they're constrained by this idea of what's considered normal within the industry, right? So social, moral, ethical, all of those norms constrain us and essentially affect our ability to broaden our thinking. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So what we need to do, and you guys are the 3%ers, obviously, because you're here today, right? Of course you are, Joe. So what I want you to do is I want you to actually expand this box, right? We're going to go from this small box, we're going to expand it. And in fact, we're going to create a matrix that we call the Flossom Matrix. And on the vertical here, Joe, at the bottom, you have what's normal. At the top, you have what is weird or different. And then over here on the horizontal x-axis, here's the deal. You can either lean in and do more, or you can purposely pull back and do less. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So you've got 4 quadrants here, in essence. Logan, do me a favor, unmute yourself. You're up first. You're gonna help me tackle the first quadrant, which is top left. This is the idea of doing, less of what others, less of what makes you different, right? And we call this the cow or the conform quadrant. Now, Logan, first question for you. Are cows unique?
No.
No, they're not unique. Actually, they are. And the reason why they are unique, at least to a certain extent, is the spots of a cow. Their
Okay.
spots are like our fingerprints. No two cows are alike. But I think you were getting to the point, do cows know that they're unique, Logan?
I reckon they don't.
No, they don't. In fact, one cow could go this way, right? What would the rest of the cows do?
They just follow them.
Follow right behind, right? In like a herd mentality. In fact, so much so that they would create a cow path, right? So we call this the conform quadrant. This is doing less of what makes us inherently different. Great job. Okay, Glenn's.
Okay.
You're going to unmute. You're next. Second quadrant is the idea of doing more of what makes you weird, unique, or different. If you had to guess, what animal do you think would represent the idea of doing more of what makes you unique, like not being afraid to put it out there?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was giraffe, but not being afraid to put it out there. I think a monkey.
Or a peacock,
Oh, yes.
right?
Or proud.
So,
Well, peacocks are proud. There you go.
right. So here's the deal. The feathers of a peacock, Linz, are exactly like the spots of a cow, right? But what's the difference between a cow and a peacock? What's the difference?
Peacock wants to be known and wants.
Peacock's like, yo, look at me, right? Like, they're not afraid to put it out there for everyone to see, right? And be able to highlight what makes them unique and different. So we call this the idea of the strut quadrant, right? Truly owning who we are and not being afraid to put it out there to the world. Great job. Hannah, you're up next. Hannah, you're going to do the third quadrant, which is the idea of doing more of what makes you normal. We call that the zebra or the match quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the big question for you. Are zebras black with white stripes or white with black stripes?
White with black stripes.
They're white with black stripes.
Right.
No, unfortunately, they're not. They're black and they have white stripes on them.
Okay.
No worries. We're going to give you another chance there. So here's the thing. What do you think their stripes are like? Are their stripes similar to the feathers of a peacock and the spots of a cow?
Similar in color, but different. Maybe not similar in color, but they're similar but different.
They're similar but different. The similarities are very different, is what you're trying to tell me.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So their stripes are exactly like the feathers of a peacock or the spots of a cow. No two zebras are alike, but here's the deal, Hannity. Has anyone ever been able to tell one zebra, right, from another zebra?
No.
No, right? It's even if you added more stripes, it would be hard for them to stand out.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we do as marketers, right? And this is bad because we start doing more of what's normal. We look at whoever the leader is and we do an awful thing, even though we have great intentions. We start to benchmark the leader.
Right.
And then whether we want to admit it or not, we start to emulate the things that make them a leader. Is that a recipe for standing out?
No.
No, not at all. In fact, last question for you. This is a great like Discovery Channel piece of trivia, is that zebras will huddle in groups of 4 to 5. Do you know why they do that?
To stick together?
Well, yeah, to stick together, specifically because of what? They don't want to get
eaten.
Eaten, right? A lion sees 4 or 5 zebras. They don't see 4 or 5 zebras. What do they see, Hannity?
Food.
They see one really big zebra.
Okay.
And they won't attack it.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Right. Yes.
I just think it's weird. Anyway, that's pretty cool because it's hard to stand out. So you did great. You did great.
Thank you.
Let's see. Art, can you unmute yourself, Art?
Yeah.
We're going to let you do the 4th category. Can you see this? This is the idea of doing less of what everyone else considers as normal. All right. We call this the polar bear quadrant. So Art, question for you. What color are polar bears?
I've heard of their black, but their fur is clear and they look white because of the snow reflects it.
Somebody's watching their National Geographic. Exactly. They're black.
Bing, bing, bing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Glenn's was giving you a little golf clap there. So is Casey. I love it. So we think that they're white, right? Because their fur is hollow and translucent, and the light passes through their fur. And when it does, all of the colors in the spectrum get removed. And what gets bounced back to our eyes is the absence of those colors, which is why we see them as white. So Art, let me ask you another thing. It seems like you know your polar bear. Do they live in a herd, or they pretty much live solitary lives and go out on their own?
They go out on their own.
Yeah,
Unless
they're not
they're babies.
afraid
Yeah.
to do things differently and go out on their own. You probably know this, Art. All polar bears are left-handed.
Oh, I don't know about that.
They are. And here's the deal. They're the only animal on Earth that actively hunts human beings.
Wow.
Yet they
That's
don't get
scary.
their own week on the Discovery Channel.
Mm-mm.
Right? So, Art, last question for you. If you wanted to stand out, which two animals do you think you wanted to be like?
The peacock.
The peacock for sure, right?
Yeah.
You want to double or triple down on what makes you unique. What other animal do you think you'd want to be like?
Out of that quadrant,
Yeah, so you have, there's one more. Do you want to be like a cow, a zebra, or a polar bear?
polar bear.
Polar bear, you got it. Yeah. You want to be like a polar bear or a peacock. And it's the idea that what makes us weird, unique, or different, either inherently like a peacock, doing more of that, or consciously like a polar bear doing less of what everyone else does as normal. We stand out not by doing more, but by doing less. And it's based on this idea that our flaws are the things that make us awesome, right? Or if you put those two things together, they're the things that make us
Awesome.
Flossom. So my co-author, David Rendell, who wears pretty much head to toe pink, he's about 6'8". You don't forget him when you see him. We got together, we looked at over 300 companies that have competitive separation in the marketplace. And we tried to figure out how they did it. And it turns out that there's 7 different ways that you can do this. 7 different ways. And literally that idea of being flawsome, this idea of being flawsome, this is also an acronym for all 7 ways. So it starts with this idea of flaunting. And flaunting is something we see, it kind of sits in this whole area between the peacock and the polar bear. And we see it as something that's really positive, right? So it's the idea of owning who you are and parading it without shame. Does that make sense? Like full ownership. So you guys are out in California, one of the most visited places in the entire country, right? If not the most visited place. If you had to guess, type this in the chat. Which state do you think ranked 50 out of 50 for 4 years running as the least attractive state to visit? Let's see if we've got any guesses on. Oh, Casey, you're right on it. Christine, oh, the Dakotas and Oklahoma, no. Missouri, no, you got the Arch. No. You had it right. It is Nebraska. And by the way, this used to be their slogan for tourism in Nebraska. Visit Nebraska, visit nice. Doesn't that, everyone wants to go to Nebraska after seeing that, right? So a couple years ago, they faced up to the fact that for 4 years they were number 50. and they decided to change their slogan. And this is their new slogan. Nebraska, honestly, it's not for everyone. And they owned up to the fact that, hey, they're not the most attractive place, and they're not going to sugarcoat it, and it's not going to be for everyone. And I love this. It was so counterintuitive. They got so much press as a result of it. In fact, one night, Stephen Colbert dedicated his entire monologue to the state of Nebraska. And I love this. He asked this question. He said, "Hey, Nebraska, are you okay? Seriously?" And I love the Nebraska folks because they immediately tweeted Stephen and they said, "Stephen, we are not okay because that's Oklahoma." Okay. So I love this. I'm going to share one of the pieces of creative that they did. And it's hard to read here, but it says, "Lucky for you, there's nothing to do here." And it turns out in Nebraska that they have this deal where they take these livestock feed tanks and float them down these lazy rivers. And I can only imagine there's not a lot of rowing going on, but a lot of alcoholic beverages being consumed when you're on this. But hey, it's not for everyone, right? But if this is your type of fun, you might want to come and check out Nebraska. Their requests, their visits, their requests for brochures, like literally went through the roof. Great example. Here's another tourism example. It just came out in the last month. Did anyone see the second installment in the Borat series? Anybody see Borat's subsequent movie film? Casey, what'd you think? What'd you think of the film?
No comment. I accidentally watched it with my dad.
Okay, gotcha. So if you're not familiar, it's a follow-up to the 2006 Sacha Baron Cohen. He's got this character that comes from this Central Asian country of Kazakhstan. It doesn't, when the first one came out, literally the country took out full-page ads and said, "Hey, we're not as bad as we're being portrayed in the movie." I mean, they totally railed against, even though it was kind of a comedy. Well, this time the sequel comes out right around Thanksgiving, and instead of railing against it, I got to give them credit. They actually leaned in and they created a campaign that used the catchphrase that Borat uses throughout the movie, which is "very nice, very nice." So anyway, they flaunted the fact, they embraced it. And if you get a chance, there's some good commercials that they've done, really highlighting all of the neat stuff. They flaunted the fact that they were part of that movie. All right, FLAWSOM, the F is flaunting, the L is for lopsiding. This is totally a Peacock strategy. This is taking what makes you weird, unique, and different, and you're going to double and triple down on it. Okay? Does anyone remember this movie right here? Morgan Spurlock, Joe shaking his head, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a month. He ate McDonald's. What did he find out? Duh. It's not healthy to eat fast food all the time, right? So what did, Christine, do me a favor. I know you're not going to show your video, but unmute yourself for a minute. What did every fast food restaurant do after Super Size Me came out?
Well, they tried to incorporate some healthier menu options.
Right. So things like what? Salad,
Yeah.
fruit,
Mm-hmm.
yogurt, water, for God's sakes, right?
They changed
In
the
fact,
kids' menus to make them smaller, you know, for the junk, or adding apple slices instead.
apple
that sort of thing.
slices, yeah, absolutely, right?
Mhm.
So here's the thing. There was one one fast food restaurant that decided to go in the opposite direction and double and triple down on, took food that was fat and nasty and they made it fattier and nastier. Do you know who that is?
My first thought is Carl's Jr.
Yeah, which for us is Hardee's out here on the
Okay.
East Coast. Yeah, in your back,
Yeah,
you
same
got
star.
it exactly right. Right?
Yeah.
My favorite, and in light of this movie came out, is right around when they launched the thick burger. Right? And so you're looking at right here the great American thick burger.
That's disgusting.
That's an entire hot dog split on the top, more cheese than you'd
Blech.
need in like a week, a half a pound of meat. And I love this. Potato chips in it, as if you're too
No.
lazy to physically pick up the potato chips, right? I mean,
No, this is the part where I tell you I'm a vegetarian. But
oh, there you go. See, I'm glad you're probably having something else right now and you're not even tempted. But
I'm a little
here,
nauseous.
this is a point of pride because I'm coming to you from North Carolina, which is the biggest pork producing state in the entire country, right? And this just warms my heart. A couple of years ago, they came out with this. It's called the Apocalypse. So this is no part of the pig left behind here. So warms my heart. The irony is that they have actually done extremely well over the last decade. And now just in the last year, McDonald's has followed suit. They've got rid of almost all of the healthy options on their menu to follow. Again, this is an idea of lopsiding, doubling and triple down on what makes you unique. Number 3 is this idea of antagonizing. Okay, so antagonizing actually can work on both sides of the matrix. You can antagonize by doing more of what makes you different, or you can antagonize some people by doing less of what everyone else considers as normal. All right. So we're marketers, right? We're always focused on who? The target market. Logan, unmute yourself for a second. If we're focusing so much on the target market, who do you think we might have an opportunity to play with a little bit?
Let me understand this. If we're focusing on the target market, who do we have
Focusing
an
on
opportunity?
this target, right? Who are the other people that are around that target? Do we want to do business with them at all?
No, maybe, I don't know, referral sources possibly, but.
Well, no, because we're so focused on the target. But let me ask you this. If we try to be just for everyone and cater to everyone, who do we end up being relevant for?
No one.
No one, right? So it's important that we pay attention to the target market. But if we can actually repel some people that we never want to do business with, what does that do for our target?
I think it clarifies it a little bit.
Right. It actually will attract that target by repelling some others. So a great example of this is a place started in Austin, Texas. Do you happen to have in the Sacramento Valley an Alamo Draft House? Has anyone heard of the Alamo Draft House? So Entertainment Weekly said the best movie theater in all of America. All right. So great food, excellent beer selection. They're fanatical about the movie going experience. So much so that no one under the age of 18 is actually allowed in the theater. At the age of 15, if you want to go see a movie at the Alamo Draft House, you literally have to pass a test in order to have the ability to go see a movie. And once you walk into the theater, there's a strict no talking and no texting policy. And so a few years ago, there was a woman that was talking and texting, and she got chucked out of the theater, and she left a very vicious and nasty voicemail message, of which I'll let Anderson Cooper tell you the rest of the story.
All right. Thanks very much. I said time now for the ridiculous. Tonight we're adding my latest source of annoyance, people who talk and text at the movies. And I want to talk about one young woman in particular, a woman who was repeatedly warned to stop texting during a movie in Austin, Texas, wouldn't stop, and was promptly thrown out of the theater. Then she left an angry voicemail for the theater, which is posted on its blog for your enjoyment.
No, that wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy theater.
All right. Did I mention that the theater is called the Alamo Draft House and that they serve beer? Well, I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but indeed, I think our texter may have partaken a bit, a little pre-party during the previews, perhaps. Listen to her next defense.
So excuse me for using my phone in USA, the United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater.
I love living in the United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. Now, that's the lady who knows her Constitution. What's all that freedom jazz about if some drunk girl can't constantly update her Facebook status while people are trying to concentrate on Kung Fu Panda 2? Next, the text lady employs something I like to call the silent but deadly defense.
And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being with me.
I'm sorry, drunk girl, but texting in a dark movie theater is like lighting a road flare. People are going to see it. You might not through your beer goggles, but everyone else will. Drunk girl didn't give up, though. She's been hitting the wall books, apparently, and comes up with two more arguments for her defense. A combo of the I didn't know defense, seasoned with just a touch of the I do it everywhere else defense.
I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a about what I was doing on my phone, all right?
Now, maybe she has texted her way through every other movie theater in Austin. I wouldn't be surprised, but as it turns out, this particular theater has a well-known zero-tolerance policy against talking and cell phones. It's kind of this theater's crusade, and they all kinds of creative announcements about it.
Now, I want to stop here for a second. So she made a complaint. She left this voicemail message. Now, what would most businesses do? Joe, unmute yourself for a second. What do most businesses do when they get a complaint from a customer?
Follow up with the customer or investigate.
Get them on the phone, and what do?
Talk to them, understand, maybe apologize.
Maybe understand the situation, listen, right? Apologize if they're in the wrong. What do? They try to make it right.
Yep. Give them something.
Right? Gift certificate, refund the money, right? Well, that's not who they called, right? Who do you think they called instead? They called their attorneys.
Oh, yeah.
They called their attorneys and they said, hey, can we use this? And the attorney goes, she knew she was being recorded, right? Go use it. So they've now put it on their blog. It went viral. I'd encourage you to listen to the whole thing. It's very entertaining. Mainstream news picked up on it, right? And here's the deal. They pushed away some people that they would never want in order to create a better experience for the customers that they actually want to serve. Now, here's the thing, Joe. Even if she didn't call and leave that voicemail message, I want you to imagine that it's the next Sunday and she's having brunch with 6 of her girlfriends and she launches into this tirade. Let's be honest, Joe, what are half of her girlfriends thinking?
You knew the rules. And then
right.
The other half.
They're thinking to themselves, man, that pisses me off when people talk or text. What did you say the name of that theater was? Where's that located? And what do you think the other half of her friends are saying?
I'm not going to go because I want to text during the movies too.
Right. They were totally out of line, right? I'm never going to go to that place. They're never going to see $1 of my money, which for this theater, mission accomplished, right? They're going to push away the ones that they never wanted in order to create a better experience for the ones that they do have, right? So that's the idea of antagonizing. Antagonizing by doing more of what makes you unique, or maybe less of what some people think is normal, right? So the W in FLOSSOM is this idea of withholding. Now, this is a classic polar bear strategy. It exists way down in the bottom left of the matrix. This is consciously pulling back and doing less of what everyone else does as normal. Casey, unmute yourself for a second. Tell me what day of the year this is.
Black Friday.
Just by looking
nice
at this
hint.
picture. It is Black Friday, right? Imagine you are a retailer. Why is it called Black Friday, Casey?
Because your company comes out of the red and actually starts pulling a profit for the year.
Right. It technically was because in Philadelphia there would be riots because they would do these parades right after Thanksgiving as the launch to the holiday season. But yes, that's also an accepted definition. So how do you compete? You're a retailer, Casey, right? How do you compete with every other retailer? What are some of the things you would do?
You would probably put out your Black Friday advertisements ahead
Right,
of
so you've
time.
got greater
start communicating
sales
with
than
your
your competitor.
customers.
I'm imagining this is
Say that
what they call a doorbuster or a trample sale or something. You also could, compete by what? Being open earlier or for more hours, right? So you saw some people would open on, 2 o'clock on Thursday of Thanksgiving for Black Friday. Some would open at midnight, right? Well, there's one company that decided, right, that they weren't going to compete. Do you remember who that was 4 years ago?
REI, I think, started it.
REI. They didn't compete by doing more. They competed by and stood out by doing less. They're all about their members and being outdoors. And they said, look, our families should be outside spending time together and not jockeying for place in line. And so this is brave. They closed 150 stores. You know what they also did, Casey? They shut down their website. You couldn't even buy something on rei.com on Black Friday. And now they've doubled down on this and tripled down. They've now created an entire movement called the Opt Outside movement. By shutting down and doing less on the most critical day in retail, their memberships have went up, their sales have went up, and the importance of Black Friday has actually went down. Great example of withholding. Standing out by not doing more, but by purposefully doing less. Chick-fil-A is another great example. The average Chick-fil-A makes more money than the average McDonald's, Taco Bell, and KFC put together, and they do it by only being open 6 days a week. All right, little bit of a rehash here. We talked about flaunting, lopsiding, antagonizing, and withholding. The S in FLOSSOM is this idea of swerving. Swerving. And here's the deal. I'm not going to tell you what swerving is. Joe, I see you smiling. In fact, I'm going to flaunt the fact, Joe, that I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to withhold and not tell you with what swerving is. In fact, I hope for you, Joe, it antagonizes you and pisses you off, okay? So let's just move on, Joe, to opposing. That's the O in the Flossom Matrix, all right? The O is the idea of when everyone starts to follow the leader, what some brands do is they do an exact 180 and they go in the opposite direction, right? So think about it. If you had a dating website, right? You know, how many weddings did we create? How did we get the formula right to, you know, create that perfect match, right? What did Tinder do? They went in the exact opposite direction. We're not going to find you Mr. or Mrs. Right forever. We're going to find you Mr. or Mrs. Right now. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. This is a fun one. It's about Bernie, all right, and not Bernie Sanders. We're actually going to have to go to Texas for Bernie, Texas. And I want you to tell you about the Bernie 0.5K. Now, here's the deal. I bet you, well, on an average Saturday in Sacramento, I bet you there's a dozen 5K races for charity that go on. So how do you stand out when you want to raise money for charity? Well, in Bernie, Texas, they decided to do the opposite of what almost everyone does. They created the 0.5K. And to give you a sense of how that is, I mean, it takes the average person about 7 minutes if you're walking slowly to do a 0.5K. Yeah. And by the way, they don't do this race at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. No. They do the race at noon, right? And here's the deal. It starts with, you know, you got to have this, a pre-race beer, right? Before you start the race. There's an aid station, you know, if you get halfway through and you need to take a break or hydrate. They even have a smoking section because look, let's not judge, right? And of course, it finishes with a post-race beer. I love this because it's, you know, you get a medal because, hey, you did it. You get a t-shirt because, yeah, everyone gets a t-shirt for competing. And I love this. You get so you can really brag about it, the bumper sticker that says 0.5, you know, that you can put on your bumper. And I love this. If you're too lazy, they even have a VIP option. So you can get in a VW bus and they take you around the course, right? Everyone gets a medal. So here's the thing, 0.5K race. Again, everyone else does a 5K. They did the exact opposite. A year ago when they put the race, they had 1,000 slots available for people to do this race. It sold out in under 4 minutes. It's for a great cause called Blessings in a Backpack, where they pack people's backpacks for the kids' backpacks for the weekend. Great example of opposing. Last but not least, we have microweirding. And microweirding is right here in the middle. These are little things that you do to enhance the experience. So great example of this from the great state of California, Southern California, a place called the Magic Castle Hotel. Has anyone heard of the Magic Castle? So it's in West Hollywood. You're looking right here at the most reviewed hotel on all of TripAdvisor. Last time I checked, 3,400 5-star reviews. And it's a 3-star hotel. There's nothing special about it, but they do a lot of little things at the Magic Castle. One thing that they don't do that is normal everywhere else, they don't have mini bars in the rooms. You want a soda or a candy bar, you go down to the front desk and they give it to you for free, which is kind of cool. This is something that they do that's a little different. They have a pool just like everyone does in Southern California, but their pool has a thing called the Popsicle Hotline. So the weather's getting a little warm, you need a little refreshment, you walk over, you don't have to dial, you just pick up the phone, you tell them what flavor you want, and within a minute on a silver tray and a white glove, they deliver you your popsicles poolside. Do you think that's memorable for people? Yeah, it is. All right, so that's the Flossom Matrix, the 7 different ways that you can do it. Really quickly, I want to give you the recipe if you want to create your own Pink Goldfish for your organization or maybe for a client. Let's talk about the 4 things you need to do. We call them the 4 A's. And simply, you have to do a little bit of an assessment. It starts with awareness. You have to understand what makes you unique and different, right? So you talk to your customers, right? You talk to your employees. But I would tell you one group that you're probably not thinking of that's brilliant. You want to talk to your suppliers, right? Because not only do they do business with you, they also probably do business with all of your competition. They have unique insight on what makes you different. Once you do that little bit of awareness in 360, the next step is you got to wrap your arms around it and accept what makes you unique, weird, or different. Right? In fact, I would go further and say you should appreciate those things because they're the things that can separate you in the marketplace. The third step is to align, and this idea that we want to make sure that once we know what makes us different, when somebody goes to our website, does that differentiation come through? When they walk into our office, can they get a sense of it? Or if they walk onto our showroom floor or our place of business, is that brought to life? So alignment is making sure everything is squaring up to be able to communicate. And then once you're ready to do that, the 4th A is this idea of amplification. Logan, unmute yourself for a second. Amplification is about 2 things, Logan. It's about turning the dial all the way up on some things, but it's also about turning the dial all the way down to 0 on other things. But if I want you, Logan, if I wanted you to turn the dial up, what number do you think I want you to take it to?
I'm just going to guess 11.
Oh, be still my heart. Yes, 11. Why 11?
Given that 110%, you know?
Well, most knobs only go up to 10.
Yeah, well, if
right?
it's 11,
And so
it's one more loud.
It's one louder, isn't it? If you're not familiar, I'm going to play for you the best 52 seconds in all of movie cinema.
Just a top to we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
These go to 11. So here, the takeaway is here. For some things, you're going to want to, like a peacock, right? Double and triple down on. And other things, like the polar bear, you're going to want to turn it all the way down and do less of. Does that make sense, Logan?
Sure.
Yeah, he's like, all right. Because if you do less, that's a way to stand out. And by doing more, you can also stand out. All right, so aware, accept, align, and now amplify. We've got just a couple minutes left. I want to open it up if anyone has any questions. I don't do Q&A, I do questions and comments. So who's the first question or comment? Casey, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I was just going to say that I don't think I've laughed in an AMA webinar like this in quite a while. So thank you.
Most webinars are, I don't know if you've read this, but it just came out. Most webinars are scientifically proven to defend against insomnia. Yeah. So any other comment? I'm glad you thought it was entertaining and funny. Any other comments or revelations?
Quick comment, if you need another clip, there's a movie called Forgetting Sarah Marshall where Paul Rudd is teaching a guy how to surf, and he says, do less. That might fit in nicely with your polar bear.
Ooh, I love that. I've never seen that movie. I heard good things about it though. Awesome. I'm going to check that out. Awesome. I've got one last quick story because I want to get you out of here at the top of the hour. Any other questions or comments?
Just want to say thanks, Stan. This is a unique way of looking at things from my perspective, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome.
And
All
then
right, go ahead.
Tar Heels, Blue Devils, or Wolfpack?
You know, when I moved here 8.5 years ago, I did some teaching at Keenan Flagler, which is UNC's School of Business.
Okay.
So I'm light blue, not dark blue.
Okay.
Yeah. How about yourself?
I like Duke.
You like Duke. All right. You don't have any Jersey roots, do you?
I do. Patterson, New Jersey.
Yeah, Duke is technically the University of New Jersey. Anyhow, I'm going to finish real quickly with the story of this guy right here. Ashikaga Yoshimasa was a Japanese shogun, right? He had, just like you might have a favorite coffee mug, he had a favorite tea bowl that he used to drink out of. One day he wasn't paying attention. He knocked it over, smashed into pieces. Joe, what do you do when you break your favorite coffee mug that's irreplaceable?
Oh God.
After you cry, Joe.
I
What do
go
you do?
go online and look to see if there's a replacement.
No, it's irreplaceable.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you know what that means, but
I cry.
you cry and then you try to fix it. You're like, this time I might be able to fix it.
Super glue.
So he sends it out to get fixed. It comes back 2 days later and he holds it in his hand and his heart drops. They use this black, ugly, coarse glue. They used metal staples to put it together. And Ashikaga said, no, that's not good enough. And he called in his best craftsmen throughout the entire country and he gave it to him and he said, you have to fix this. And so his best craftsmen went out for 2 weeks and they meticulously took it apart and they cleaned it. And then they used lacquer and gold and put it back together. And when they came back and they handed it to Ashikaga, and as he saw that tea bowl, his heart leapt. The TBall Joe was better now than when it was perfectly new, right? And was it better because it was flawed or broken, Joe?
Yeah.
I would say no, because the first time it came back, it would have been fine, right? It was better because of the attention that was paid to the flaws, right? Not to hide or conceal those imperfections, right? But to illuminate them and bring them to light.
I see.
Now, here's the deal, Joe. This is now an art form in Japanese culture called Konsugi. It's this idea of golden joinery. But collectors at the time, this became so popular that they would take perfectly good pieces of pottery and smash them to apply the art form of Konsugi. So as we wrap up here really quick, Konsugi is this idea of illuminating what makes you unique, right? Bringing that to life. Whereas over here, this idea of a polar bear is this concept of Wabi Sabi, another Japanese reference. But Wabi Sabi says nature is beautiful, but nature is imperfect. So it's the idea of creating intentional imperfection in order to be able to stand out. So here's the thing, as we leave each other, here's my parting thing. Don't try to stand out from the crowd. Here's my advice. It's from a guy named Hugh McLeod. He said, avoid crowds altogether. So on behalf of this, again, this is like my 65th chapter that I've done. Thank you everyone for listening through this. I hope maybe you're willing to think a little differently and ask yourself, what's your pink goldfish? Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Stan, too. This has been a great presentation. Really glad to have you with us. So thank you again. As I mentioned to everyone, the session is recorded. So if you know someone that might get a chuckle or benefit from seeing this content, feel free to share that. We'll email that out. We'll also include Stan's email address if you have follow-up conversations, and you can check out Stan's book series on Amazon, right, Stan?
Yep.
Terrific. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.